balls all affect one another, and then now and then a jolt comes from outside the system. You see what I mean? The Q shot comes from outside the system and gets things moving. And the Q shot's not part of the physical system. But physicists think that the universe itself, I mean the whole total universe since the Big Bang, that's a unity. I mean, there's nothing coming from outside that. But if that picture that you're giving, which I agree is a natural one, if you're a dualist, that the mind, the brain is a kind of a collection of billiard balls, and the mind kind of comes from outside the system now and then and puts a Q shot in, yeah? Then looking at the physics of the brain, you should be able to see that happening. You should be able to see a collection of neurons where they're not firing at all. They're just sitting there. And then suddenly, whomp, they all spark into action. And you look for the physical reason for that. And you say, well, there is no physical reason for that. That was the ectoplasm acting. That was the mind coming in and zapping the brain. Yeah? But that never happens. I mean, not half a mile from here, there are hundreds of people who spend their entire lives looking at bits of brain. That phenomenon has never, ever been observed. Yeah? The brain is completely comprehensible as a physical system in its own right. You just don't see these jolts of energy coming from outside the system and sparking it into activity. Yep?
Just to clarify, we are equating the mind with the soul, but not the mind and the brain. Right?
That's right. That's right. I was suggesting provisionally, suppose you separate these two, the soul or the mind on the one hand and the body on the other. The distinction is actually artificial. It doesn't really make sense because the root distinction is this one between imaginative understanding and scientific explanation. That's the important distinction. That seems completely real. That's what I think we began by saying we're all on the same page with. Most of us anyway. And then if you say, so there are two different objects, the body and the soul, then things start to go wrong. Yeah, then you get all these puzzles that I've been raising.
Right. I just mean that the mind and the soul are being equated here, but not the mind and the brain. The brain is still like a physical entity that's governed by physical laws.
Yeah. That's the hypothesis I'm considering, yeah. And what I'm saying is that doesn't make sense.
Okay.
So, because if you say the mind or soul on the one hand and the body or the brain on the other hand are two different things, two different objects, yeah, then you face the question, am I going to be able to give scientific explanations of the soul, of the mind? And then you have no idea where to begin, because science really seems to need to work with the brain or the body or something like that, the behavior, as its material. And if you say, no, that's not what I'm talking about, how could you scientifically study ectoplasm? How would you go about it? You have no idea how you'd go about it. And the other thing I was saying is, if you had only a body, if you think only of the complex body, then in order to negotiate with such a complex physical system, you're actually going to want to use imaginative understanding anyhow.
But the example that you gave about how if it were to be the end of class and then the people without souls would just stay put and look fastly over at you, I mean, wouldn't our brain function where it registers like the word end of class and then synapses fire and whatever happens and then we stand up and exit the classroom without the body having to be there?
That's right. That's right, and that's what I'm saying actually happens. I mean, if the other hypothesis were right, then, I mean, there's a Nobel Prize for anyone who manages to do the following. You put some imaging apparatus on top of someone in the class, yeah? And then, when it comes time for them to leave, you see a group of neurons in the motor cortex suddenly getting fired up, and there's no physical cause, because that was the soul. That was this whole bringing its Q shot in from outside the system and firing up the neurons. You never see that. Every time you see neurons firing, you look at other neurons connected to it, and they made those ones fire. Yeah? It should be possible, if this hypothesis was right, to put a brain under investigation and see where the external shot hits from the soul came in. But that just doesn't happen. It would be great if it did. It would be wonderful if it did, but no one's ever seen that. Someone had a hand up. Yeah. So you haven't asked a question yet. Yeah.
Okay. So are you saying by this that every behavioral output is the result of like a physical stimulus?
That's right. Every behavioral output is a result of a physical stimulus. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the physical is a closed system, as people sometimes say. Another way people sometimes put it is that there are laws of the conservation of energy. That if the soul was really coming from outside, energy wouldn't be conserved. Energy should sometimes leak off into your soul from the physical, or suddenly come into the physical from the mental. But that doesn't happen.
By this logic, is there really any way like we're proving that and there's no interaction?
That's right. That's what I'm saying. That's my point. No, how could you? Right? It doesn't make any, I mean, you hypothesize them as separate, and then it turns out if you subtract them, it doesn't make any difference. Yeah. Yeah.
If the mind is not supposed to be a physical object, then why would we expect that there will be a physical sign that it exists?
If the mind is not a physical object, yeah, then there should be no physical sign that it exists. That's right. That's right. So let's just take that. There's no physical reason to suppose the mind exists. Yeah? Okay. But then there's just no reason to suppose the mind exists at all. I mean, what would be the non-physical reason be?
I don't know, like a religious belief?
A religious belief. Oh, it would be well, religious beliefs are usually said to be based on faith rather than evidence. Yeah. So there's no evidence for the existence of the mind. Yeah.
If the mind is not physical, then there should be no physical evidence in your brain.
No, that's an important suggestion. No, that's a very good suggestion. Yeah. It would be that just as you can have the attitude to the world of a religious believer, you can have the attitude to the world of a believer in minds. And this is not something rationally grounded. This is a matter of faith. That's the suggestion. Yeah. I think that's quite a good suggestion. Yeah. But if you think of it like that, you can make the same points about religion. I don't want to trample on anyone's sensibilities here too much, but you can make the same remarks about religion as you can about the mind, as I'm making here. That one picture of what's going on if you're religious is that there's a separate realm out there that is not the usual earthly one, yeah, where various supernatural beings exist. And that would be like dualism. And that's usually taken to be not really what the religious believe, well, often, and people I talk to anyway, taken to be not quite the picture the religious believer wants. It's not that there's a kind of paranormal realm out there that physicists could study. They could say, what are angels? Yeah? What are junior gods? What are they made of? These are meant to be bad questions. I mean, nobody truly religious really takes that seriously. Nobody's a strong word. Religious people don't usually take that kind of question seriously. What are the angels made of? What kind of energy do they have? What are the laws governing their behavior? Yeah? So we need some different picture of what their motive, what it means to say these things exist. And another, if you just follow that logic, what I'd be arguing here is that if you're going to understand the world religiously, don't think of it as two different things, a realm here and something over there that also has characteristics that can be studied by science. Think of it as a single realm that you are understanding in two different ways. Indeed, you could think of the religious impulse as an extension of our imaginative understanding of other people. Okay. So, I just say that to suggest that it's not that I wish to push any particular religious views down your throat. It's just, I think a lot of the same issues come up in connection with religion as are coming up here. Yeah. And so without wanting to simplify it very much, I don't know that it helps to connect it to religion because it's the same set of questions. Yeah. Anything else on this? Is this all? Are you reasonably comfortable with this? Put up your hand if you're reasonably comfortable with this. Okay. Okay. Actually, I've only just begun on the stuff I was going to, but it just occurs to me that if I carry on, we won't get to hear what people are thinking of doing for the essay. So this has just been a preliminary thing over the distinction between thinking in terms of imaginative understanding versus scientific explanation. Is there one object or two? And the idea that there's just one object with different ways of understanding it, imaginatively or scientifically. That's kind of the background to a lot of what we do. Because once you get to the point where you say, there's just one thing here that we're understanding in two different ways, there's just one thing here, the person, that we're understanding in two different ways, then all the theories that we've been looking at, behaviorism, central state materialism, functionalism, and so on, all those theories are ways of trying to understand how these two levels of comprehension are connected, what the relation is between them. But how would you like to proceed? I could carry on for a bit. I would be more interested in hearing what people are planning to do in their essays. What would you like to do? One possibility is we could do something about the essays on Wednesday. If you don't much care. Would you like to do something practical? Yeah, let me just ask you. We could do a practical session about how to write the essays on Wednesday. Would that be a good idea? Yes. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, this will have to be highly interactive. Okay, so it will be particularly important that you come to class on Wednesday with some suggestions to what you want to argue for anyhow in your essay and some questions about it. Yeah. And I think the GSIs can do a kind of something together on that. Is that the way to do it? Is that the way to go on Wednesday? Yeah. Okay. So Wednesday will be a practical session on essay writing. Okay. Any other questions about what we've done so far? Okay. Well, in that case, just for the last few minutes today, I will maybe blast through, trying to say how what the other stuff we've been doing connects to this general frame. So Descartes was trying to give an argument, a further argument that soul and body must be distinct, right? Descartes was trying to argue that after all, despite what I've just been saying, soul and body must be distinct because the certainty with which you know of your own existence is greater than the certainty of your knowledge of any physical thing. If you say that there's some supremely powerful and malicious deceiver, then you don't know about the existence of anything physical, but you do know about your own existence. And your own existence, therefore, can only be a matter of thinking. Thinking must be something different to the physical. That was Descartes' first argument. I'm just curious, what do you guys think? Does that work, that argument? Does that show that body and soul are distinct? Can you put your hand up if the answer is yes?